Let's say you want to travel at the speed of light and reach the nearest star as quickly as possible. You have built a spaceship with the latest and most advanced propulsion and are embarking on your journey. Soon you would realize that you have embarked on an impossible mission despite your best efforts, because at the first attempt at traveling, you would soon understand that this universe has clearly defined rules that cannot really be broken. Ali, let's say you still want to try. You have a drive that can theoretically bring you close to the speed of light, given that you can't just suddenly accelerate, because inertia would turn you into a pancake in your seat. You are trying to speed up with g acceleration, for example. You feel it on some rides at the amusement park when you have the sensation of being pushed or falling. With acceleration under gravity, it would theoretically take you 5 months to reach the speed of light. I say theoretically, because physically you would get stuck long before reaching the speed of light. Whenever a physical object, in your case a spaceship and your body, tries to reach the speed of light, bizarre things begin to happen. The body and the spaceship are accelerating more and more, gaining greater and greater mass. And to reflect the speed due to the increase in mass, you must increasingly amplify the energy of your propulsion. At the speed of light, this mass goes into infinity, just like your energy. There's a possibility that you could turn into a singularity, that is, into a black hole, when you would be trying. Are we not mentioning the effect of time dilation? The faster you travel, the slower time passes for you in that cosmic race. At the speed of light for such a massive object, time even comes to a halt. If you were to somehow succeed in your intention in a completely impossible way, you would find yourself in a total singularity of infinite mass and stop time. No one is actually sure, but we are certain that the universe has clear physical limitations and our bodies cannot travel at the speed of light. One of the reasons this happens is that even very small amounts of mass in our universe have incredibly huge energy. The energy at the subatomic level comes from one, let's call it, completely different world. And today we will again talk about this other world that still gives enormous headaches to the intelligent people of the world. And we will talk about the so-called ghostly action at a distance. Welcome to the Balkans in Fokanal. Although we said in the introduction that we cannot physically travel at the speed of light, we can do some other things at the same speed. And this is sweet information. And this is actually a huge thing and a huge advancement. Once, information traveled by smoke signals on a piece of paper that took months to reach you by ocean ship. But now at the other end of the planet, you turn on the Balkan UFO channel and at the speed of light, almost instantly, you receive information from today's video. You get the tone, you get the picture. The vast majority of people take such things for granted. No one is bewildered by such technologies and photons that travel at the speed of light. Through your home or through the very air. No one gets freaked out by such thoughts. You have coma technology in your pocket, which is completely normal. But do you know who would actually go crazy? Well, probably most people just 100 years ago. Our civilization has started doing very interesting things with photons, electrons. But in recent years we have begun to tinker with something even more interesting. Because what if you could travel faster than the speed of light? What if you could send information at even greater speeds, instantly to any point in the universe? It is impossible, but not really. We have actually opened the door to such possibilities, and today you will see some incredible properties of our universe, but broader than the universe. Just as a person from the early 20th century would be bewildered and thrilled by a piece of technology from your pocket, how bewildered would you actually be by a piece of technology from the future? The technology that is 100 years ahead of your technology, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. Would you even be able to understand 1% of such technologies, Pyrotone? But as you know, I like to combine such topics with something a little different. Someone with such technologies is currently flying above your heads. And today we will try to understand just a small part of their capabilities. In some of the previous videos, I talked about the basics of quantum mechanics. And now we will go over some basics again. Because no matter how many times we go through these necessary basics, most likely we will come to the point again where Richard Feynman, for example, stated that no one actually understands quantum mechanics, neither students nor professors who teach them at various universities. But now we will go through the basics with the main ones. Let's call them the culprits, who are actually responsible for knowing anything at all. According to Newtonian mechanics of motion, scientists at the beginning of the 20th century expected identical mechanics in the atomic and subatomic world. Just as planets move around the sun in orbits, so too should protons and electrons move around the nucleus with the core. In this way, the physical world around us has always functioned. Logic dictates that this invisible world around us functions in the same way. Not completely surprising, it is not. The atomic and subatomic worlds are so different that they simply cannot be connected to our macro-physical world. What is actually a paradox and should not be possible because our world is made up of just such elements. Charles Rutherford in 1912 proposed a new and revolutionary theory to the world of science about the outer world, theory in which he proposed that protons and electrons move around the nucleus and core like planets around the sun. As soon as he developed this latest revolutionary theory of his, he immediately faced an unsolvable problem. The man immediately found a hole in his own theory. If the nucleus of this atom is positively charged, this means that an electron in such an orbit would eventually lose its orbit and, to put it simply, collide with the nucleus. This would be a completely unstable system. Such atoms would not exist, and our world could not exist. Rutherford was planning to abandon this theory of his that made no sense at all. But Niels Bohr jumps into the story trying to save his theory. This man had a new idea that made him so excited that he canceled the trip with his wife after the wedding, and even hired his wife in the following months to write down his ideas and calculations. The man was lazy about writing, and it was the birth of one of the most important parts and works in physics in the 20th century. Niels Bohr then proposed this. The orbits of electrons cannot exist randomly. They must have some clearly defined orbit at various positions. But between those orbits, there is nothing. This was in complete contrast to the ideas that had been established for several hundred years, and this was actually the birth of quantum mechanics as we know it today. Because in the previous world of physics, you could move planets around the sun in whatever orbit you desired. Only it simply couldn't be done with electrons. It was completely impossible. Niels Bohr draws inspiration for his theory from the new ideas and theories of that time. And these are that light and energy around us are actually waves. Waves that are made of groups of energy quanta. A quantum is the smallest amount of energy that a system can gain or lose, hence the name quantum mechanics. Only despite that, Bohr based his theory on the particles of Tom. Valovic, you will come later. This was the birth of completely new theories in our world. Just try to imagine the brilliant minds of such people who have come to such conclusions through ideas. They had absolutely no technology more than 100 years ago to confirm their ideas. They could not practically experiment, but still, more than 100 years later, their discoveries are more than 100 years old, confirmed. And do you know what happened next to Niels Bohr? The vast majority of scientists of that time completely rejected his theory and disagreed. But then some other scientists who were intrigued by his work jumped in. It was very interesting. In 1926, the then 25-year-old physicist named Werner Heisenberg created a mathematical model that supported the ideas of Niels Bohr. Even the classical physicists of that time continued to reject such ideas and calculations because the mathematics was completely unknown. The ideas were simply too absurd. This year, Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger presented his theory on wave mechanics as some kind of alternative type theory. And here, for the first time in the history of physics, a huge debate was created. Are electrons particles or waves? Schrödinger's school advocated the ideas that electrons are actually waves, like some kind of cloud around the atomic nucleus. They did not exist as a point in spacetime. The electron was actually a wave that spread throughout the entire spacetime of our universe. Physicists like this Schrödinger idea. They actually knew how waves worked. They could mathematically calculate their movements. It was a revolution. But finally, in the 20th century, we got ways to peek into this micro world from which our macro world is built. Most physicists did not like those quantum ideas. They preferred waves. The waves were something familiar. So who was right? Schrödinger with the wave model, or Bohr or Heisenberg with the particle model. Heisenberg's theory advocated for particles, but they had one big problem. They were not sure where these particles, that is, electrons, are located in the nucleus's orbit. How was their position at all? Because Heisenberg and Rutherford were almost out of their minds on this problem. It was not clear to them how it was possible that we do not know the position of the electron. But then, during a break between research while walking in the park, he suddenly realized, to determine the position of the electron, you must observe the electron. You need to illuminate it with photons. And when you illuminate it with photons, that interaction disturbs the position of the electrons. Heisenberg then realized that the very act of observing an electron changes its location. And this uncertainty is a fundamental aspect of the nature of such phenomena. This is now called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which proves that it is completely impossible to measure the position and momentum of a particle with precision. The more you know about the position of the particle, the less you know about its momentum, and vice versa. The more you know its momentum, the less you know its location. This realization has led to something that scientists are still puzzling over today. This micro-world is dual, and at the same time, it is a wave of particles. When you do not observe it with your own eyes, that is, when you do not explain it with photons, it behaves like a wave. But when you look at it, you see a particle, meaning a microscopic, tiny particle, which actually contradicts everything we know in physics. It simply shouldn't be possible, but obviously it is very much possible. So when we transfer such properties from this micro-world to our macro-reality, let's call it the world, we get some incredible ideas. Is this month really in the sky? Whoever we do not observe. Is all spacetime in real time generated before our eyes because we are observers in this real time? I know that the idea of whether the moon is really in the sky. The body is completely absurd and impossible crazy. But that is exactly what should happen when the properties of this micro-world are applied to the reality around us in this macro-world. Quantum mechanics operates precisely on this principle, which scientists have been trying to unify with classical physics for more than 100 years. If our entire world is made up of waves that behave like particles, and when we look at them, does that mean that everything around us is thanks? That we are surrounded by energy? Energy that behaves as solid only because we observe it. According to such thoughts, a consciousness is actually needed to create a collapse in this local reality. According to you, do we all mentally share this reality? It means that if I do not look at the moon, it still exists because you are looking at it. If there is no awareness in the universe to experience this reality, is there even a reality, or is everything a wave of possibilities? These are incredibly deep philosophical questions that rose after such scientific discoveries. There's another bizarre aspect of quantum mechanics that suggests that not only is our reality not what it seems that at the quantum level, everything is actually connected, and that in real time, regardless of the distance within this space-time. This phenomenon is called quantum entanglement, or as Albert Einstein put it, spooky action at a distance. Albert Einstein did not like these quantum ideas. They contradicted almost all of his ideas, which is why he made this famous statement, "God does not play dice." Although he was aware of the reality of quantum problems, he was not enthusiastic about them and sought other explanations and hidden variables that could explain the duality of our world. And what is this so-called spooky action at a distance? In classical physics, we are accustomed to the idea that the properties of an object are determined independently of any observation or measurement, which means whether you measure the distance between one end of the street or not, it doesn't matter, the distance is one. This distance is always the same whether you observe that distance or not. You may not know what the distance is, but it is constant regardless of your interaction. In the quantum world, as you may have seen, situations are drastically different. Quantum entanglement is a phenomenon in quantum mechanics where two or more particles become linked in such a way that the state of one particle cannot be described independently of the states of the other particles. This connection exists even when the particles are physically separated from each other. So it doesn't matter if they are a meter apart or if each is at the opposite end of the universe. This fundamental concept in quantum information theory has unimaginably deep implications. for our understanding of the nature of reality, as such things should actually not be possible, as such quantum entangled particles can be, for example, electrons and photons. You have, for instance, to particles that are quantum entangled. You measure the so-called spin of one particle and its polarities, its properties. At the same time, regardless of the distance, you also determine the properties of this other particle. No matter how far this distance is, 1 billion kilometers, 100 light years, the other end of the universe, it doesn't matter. You will know the properties of this other particle. This unusual connection between particles is instantaneous. It does not travel at the speed of light, but is momentary regardless of distances and seemingly violates Einstein's theory of relativity, which this effect actually mockingly called ghostly action on the further. Einstein, as far as this is concerned, was not right, which was experimentally confirmed again in 2022 when 3 scientists received the Nobel Prize. They have once again proven and confirmed that 2 different particles can be instantaneously connected, regardless of the distance. Interestingly, the idea of quantum entanglement was actually first presented. Just Albert Einstein did this in collaboration with Podolsky and Rosen in 1935. It was actually a theory of ideas that was supposed to discredit quantum theory and prove that it is not complete. Even when he did not like this theory, Albert Einstein actually contributed to its development by developing the idea of this quantum entanglement with his genius, with which he wanted to prove the absurdity of quantum ideas. Later, Schrödinger did something similar by presenting the idea with his cat, and I talked about that in one of my recent videos. The structure of these quantum states indicates an unusual connection between particles in real time, regardless of their distances, which according to the standard model of physics should not be possible. And it has been experimentally proven again in 2022. And it again demonstrates how different these two worlds are, that scientists are persistently trying to connect. Such things could mean in the future that regardless of the distance in space, there's a possibility that information travels instantly from point A to point B, which seemingly contradicts the theory of relativity. If it is possible to instantly measure the state of such different particles that are interconnected by some invisible forces, it may also be possible to instantly transfer information. Let's now put a little Tabasco in today's video to spice it up a bit. What if someone is somewhere? Just as we are familiar with the laws of physics in this universe, what if someone is, in addition to what we know, also learned the law within such quantum states? You can manipulate them in ways that we manipulate matter. For those who may still not understand where such things lead, quantum entanglement essentially means that telepathy could be possible, to physically transmit information instantly to another location, in this case between two brains. If such things are possible, then perhaps telekinesis is also possible. For example, that is the manipulation of space and time through consciousness. That is your rubber. So, using your tires, you manipulate the matter of this universe at quantum levels. And in the same way a child physically shapes Play-Doh, but in this case, you do not need a physical addition. Most scientists are horrified by such ideas, literally laughing or going crazy, because you are venturing into so-called pseudoscience, and ideas that literally contradict everything we know about our universe. But that is precisely the point. Never in the history of science has there been a huge quantum leap, and some kind of progress achieved through established ideas. Never has anything revolutionary come from established ideas, but rather from these seemingly crazy ideas. What actually seemed crazier was essentially more revolutionary, and such ideas always created enormous resistance. The same was true for quantum mechanics. Mathematician Eric Weinstein really said very well that today's science is in the straitjacket of the theory of relativity, that the whole science has become that of the Salabratine Tana, where no one dares to test new ideas anymore out of fear of ridicule, which has led to an incredible stagnation in science. If you want to travel to other stars, it simply cannot be achieved with Albert Einstein and the theory of relativity. To understand the true nature of the reality around us, we need new physics. Literally, a new branch of physics and new ideas are needed. Quantum mechanics is on the right track, but research in that area has pretty much stalled. And this is because scientists are trying to solve these main problems in sciences without having insight into all the variables. They are trying to solve these micro, non-physical problems in a physical way, which simply does not work. For the very nature of this phenomenon, that is, of these quantum states, is not physical. And that is exactly why there is no progress. We are still flying with rockets to overcome gravity. Anti-gravity technologies are not achieved in such ways. And some scientists have really become frustrated. They are literally stuck. They are those who try to deal with such problems, always laughing. Propetkovo and Weinstein, as well as some other unconventional scientists and physicists, have no solution to the mystery of quantum and our world without a solution to consciousness and biology. The consciousness is of course immaterial. You cannot impose any mathematical form on consciousness. I will give you a practical example that we are actually at the end of our physical limits in our civilization. When I was much younger, I was fascinated by the possibilities of new computers that were coming out faster and faster every year. So we are talking about the first desktop computers, and a new processor was coming out. Everything was literally getting faster and faster, more cores, more gigahertz. How quickly this pace unfolded. We literally thought there were no limits to such accounts. Have you noticed that this development is slow? With the latest nanotechnology processes, they are creating fewer and fewer transistors, but these processes have limits. I am growing more GHz operating frequencies, rather than pushing more and more cores. We have almost reached the physical limits of such computing technologies. For example, you have examples with internal combustion engines. The technology is maximally refined. Physically, it simply doesn't get better than what we have perfected so far. There are minor improvements, but the concept is literally and serves. There's also a trend in photography and photography technologies, pushing for as many megapixels as possible, which was a marketing trick. The more pixels, the better. It doesn't mean anything. 10 or 100 megapixels on your mobile screen absolutely means nothing, because your eyes can't see the difference, unless you're doing some mega panorama of the city due to zooming in on the photo. We have reached the limits of our science, and almost no one in physics deals with the real problems that would solve such major issues. And of course, the main mystery, that is consciousness. And for solving such quantum problems, a larger and more powerful telescope and some other larger powerful device will not help you, but the organ that is located between your ears. Because do you want to hear the greatest curiosity? Our brain does not operate solely on physical biological principles as in classical science, meaning electrochemical reactions and neuron impulses. Our brain, in addition to this physical aspect, as in the real world, operates on the principles of quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement. The architecture of your brain at this moment while processing the data of today's video, Radian quantum principles. What is actually incredible is that we are talking about the very same things that make absolutely no sense in the macro world, yet they unfold within your head. Some people naturally believe that consciousness itself is not localized in your brain, but rather emerges from much deeper states. We are currently in the early stages of quantum computer development and are taking the first steps in the development of such new types of technologies. For a small example, do you know how much these computers, which are still not fully developed, are faster than the fastest conventional processors of this kind? These computers in the early stages of development are 100% faster. Million put, a sad something concerning. In which direction is the development of such technologies moving? And where do such technologies even come from? And are we even ready for them? I think it's the same for me. Combine the incredible development in artificial intelligence research with the development of quantum computers that will be its processing power, and you could potentially achieve frightening and dangerous results. Earlier in the video, I added a little Tabasco. Let's spice up today's video even more. Whistleblower from the USA who will soon come to light talks about beings of incredible mental abilities that use technologies precisely at these quantum levels we discussed today. They connect mentally with such technologies that are essentially unimaginably advanced. Artificial intelligence. Do you notice the similarity between such technologies and the claims of these alleged whistleblowers? Whistleblowers claim that it is precisely because of such things that we are unable to use most of these advanced technologies due to our mental limitations and misunderstandings. We literally have their technology in our hands, but we cannot even start most of it. As if you had given people electric generators 2,000 years ago, but without a power source, that is, power plants and electricity, or that you gave them a smartphone with a dead battery. And in the case of the whistleblower from Washington, in our case the difference is even greater